The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello there, participants. Welcome. This is Karel van Hooy speaking, and together with Evelina Rock, I'm your co-leader in this team and work group coaching community of practice. My colleague Evelina has updated and changed a little bit our PowerPoint presentation. It's now in beautifully blue. Thank you, Evelina. And I'm going to try to surf through it. Yes, as you know, we focus on the challenges, methodologies, and successes of team coaching. You'll find some examples of topics that we usually treat in these sessions. You can stay connected with our community by joining our email distribution list. You can share feedback with us. You can join our communities on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. You can download this slide deck so that you have all the links available for you to work with them at another moment. In case you missed the webinar, we're on YouTube and we're also on SlideShare, and you'll find all that on the slides if you download them. For your information, there's a new Ccu Certificate Policy. In the past, we needed passwords to be sent. You don't need any longer to send these passwords. If you've been participating through the GoToWebinar system, you don't have to do anything. However, if you have participated by phone or if you've left any technical problems during the webinar, it is recommended that you send an email to Christopher Rush asking for your certificates, only in those two cases. Please give them a week to make that in order, because we're a lot of people, and if you don't have received anything in a week, you're kindly invited to send an email again to Christopher. Now, for next year, please block your calendars on those 4 dates. There will be 4 webinars and no longer 12 webinars, so 4 webinars, but those will take 90 minutes instead of 60, and you will also receive 1.5 CCU for them. That makes me arrive at the following topic, that is the presentation of our 2 wonderful speakers. Here they are, Leda and Dirk Versées. Dirk is just like me, a person from Belgium. He's got a huge, extensive experience as executive coach with special focus on everything that is systemic coaching. And he's also a little bit of an academic background because he's worked together with Professor Jesse Segers, and he has written a book and quite some scientific articles. Dear Dirk, fellow Belgium, welcome aboard. We also have Leda Turai. I met Leda, I believe, 1 or 2 years ago when she visited ICF Belgium. She is an MCC, Dirk is a PCC, and Leda has also honored us with 4 years of participation at the Global Board of Directors at ICF, where she has been the board director herself. She's also got a lot of experience as executive coach, and she also links to quite some academic organization, including in the faraway Finland, beautiful country during wintertime. So Leda, Dirk, it's an honor to have you here with us. I'm very grateful for that. Please share the screen with whoever is going to start, and lots of success.
Thank you very much, Carl, for presenting us, and thank you for not speaking Dutch with Dirk, because I can understand you and others can understand you. So good evening to everyone. I'm very happy to be here with Dirk. Dirk, would you like to just come in?
Good evening to everybody.
And actually, we have had this thought to present you something about team coaching beyond the obvious. And the obvious is going to be discovered to you. And okay, just a second, because do you see now my slides? Because it got a little bit blocked.
It's okay.
Yes, you can see it. So we have simple learning objectives for you tonight. It's more like it's really presenting several concepts of what can be beyond the team, and how is team coaching not happening in the vacuum, but it's happening in a systemic view, and what do we understand under the systemic. And we will present different concepts of systemic. And we'll focus then on constellations in organizations, because this is something what we have learned together with Dirk, and what we have experienced as something quite magical and interesting, and probably partly explainable and partly not explainable, but definitely something what really works and has an impact. And we have also noticed that it's becoming more and more popular, and more coaches are using it in the organizations. And we'll give you some tips about what can you do, because you need to experience constellations, and it's really difficult to deliver that experience over a webinar. But maybe through our experiences, you will be able to imagine what it is and how can you apply some of the simple principles of it. Dirk.
Yes, thank you, Leda. As a way of introduction, you can see on the slide there are two different definitions. The first one is team coaching as we usually know it. It's about coaching the interaction process between the team members in a way that the team can take ownership of the work in the process of cooperation in order to obtain the team goals. So what we do in this workshop is we add a systemic view on it, and we ask ourselves what else might influence the success of a team that is not part of the team at this moment. So things that might not be visible but still influence the results of the teamwork. Can we go on?
Yes.
So what should we do as a kind of an agenda? We look at systemic work at 3 levels, 3 different approaches on systemic in team coaching. We remind you about the underpinning laws that are available in systemic work. We will give you some tips for team coaching beyond the obvious, which means taking care of the systems that are in there or around it. And we try to give an answer on the question, systemic work, is it an esoteric game or is it something else? So let's start with the first one, system work at 3 levels. On the slide, you can see 3 words: individual, group, society. Where does it come from? When you look at systemic work, the most simple system to survive is an individual. And he's quite conscious about what he's doing and what he's not doing, about his behavior. The laws of systemic work can influence his behavior, but the person immediately knows whether he will be blocked or not, whether it's violated or dysfunctional or whatever it may be in his system. When we have more than one person, you have a group. And a small group, even then, a lot of things become more unconsciousness. There are hidden dynamics showing up. So when you go there as a coach, be aware that a lot of things are influencing, and there are hidden dynamics that you don't see at first sight. In society, which is even a bigger system, it's very difficult to handle. Mostly you cannot handle what is going on. Sometimes afterwards we can realize or try to explain it. So what it means that within those survival mechanisms of the individual, a group, or a society, that on the individual side, it's quite conscious what's going on. He knows, the person knows his behavior, and in a coaching session with him or her, you will detect quite easily the questions. In a small system, it can be more difficult. Imagine in a family, a lot of things might go on that we don't see at first sight. In a business, a team, there are unwritten rules that people follow. In a society, we talk about evolutions. So this is only a short introduction. What this seminar is going about, this webinar is going about, is about the second one, the group. But the group is not a group as such. So if you can show the next slide, please.
Yes.
The question is, where are we if you do team coaching? What I mean is that you can see that an individual might be part of a team, that might be a part of a department, that might be a part of a business unit, that might be a part of a global company, but we talk about the same individual. Or you can turn the other way around. We have a global company, we have to coach the company or a team of the company, a business unit, department, team, individual. So the most important thing to learn, or at least what I learned by using systemic work in team coaching, is starting from a kind of attitude of, I don't know it. I don't know where I am. When I talk about a team, it must be part of a bigger team. It must be part of something else. And where is the individual then in the whole stuff? So that's why in the end we will give you some tips on attitude and systemic questions. Okay, let's move on.
So as we said, we'll present 3 approaches, and they will be quite different, but they all can be categorized under the concept of systemic. And how do we understand system? System can be defined in a very simple way, and I will be quoting Barry Orshey. He says that actually in the system, the main function of the system is actually to survive and to develop. It's not to be perfect, but in the system there are conditions, and as we are part of different systems at the same time, in each system we will be in certain conditions, and we will be moving in and out in those conditions, and therefore we will be experiencing different things. And one of the simplest views to the systems in terms of team coaching is Peter Hawkins' approach. And I will be very brief about this because I know that he will be one of the presenters of this community of practice. And I really find his work very valuable. So I'm promoting him. So if you would like to know more, then he's definitely the person who can share his vast experience. But I do enjoy his model because it gives a simple view about what to pay attention to when we work with a team. And one of the things which sometimes team coaches might do is to focus overly too much on the team, forgetting that the team is a part of a bigger organization, is a part of a bigger system. And also, sometimes we can forget to pay attention that the team has actually a commission, has a task, and we might work too much with the relationship, not paying attention that that relationship is a function or is a condition for the task to be achieved, for the performance to be developed. And Peter Hawkins actually works with high-performing teams. And he says that a high-performing team has to really, really understand what is the commission, what are the resources, what are all the expectations from all the stakeholders. And a team coach has to keep that in mind when the team coach is working with the team. And also, I find this model very useful in the team coaching as a diagnostic tool to really understand where the work has to be done. As Dirk said, it's very useful to have in the beginning the I really don't know mindset, is the as also the ICF competency says, staying in the not knowing, because it's not that easy to see in the beginning whether we have the symptom or the cause at our hand. And this model helps to understand where the work needs to happen. Is it about the team understanding what is its purpose in the bigger system? Or is it about helping them to clarify their values, accountability, their roles? Or is it about really the relationship and helping them to have some processes of communication, of dealing with team dynamics, creating a team culture, having psychological safety for very constructive conflict, and for managing, using diversity to enrich the team? So as you see, when we coach a team, it's really useful to have an outside and an inside focus, a task focus and a process focus. So Dirk, what can you say about systemic constellations? How are they different from Peter Hawkins' concept?
Well, systemic constellations might be some way of working in systemic work that is well known around the world in the meantime. The point is that in a systemic constellation, you make a three-dimensional representation about what is going on in a team. Can you move on to the next slide, Leda?
Yes.
So what happens is that in constellation work, we talk about invisible layers and threads that connect people. So you have 5 people, and all of them have 4 relationships to manage the team. So when you're 5, there are 4 relationships to manage for each. But those layers and threads can be within the same space and time or across different space and time. The first one we call horizontal, the second one we call vertical. Let me explain. If you look at this, in this invisible layers and threads that connect people, it means that everyone and everything, yes, is there and is connected. And so everyone and everything is part of multiple systems at the same time. And knowing that in each system we're part of, we take another role. So systems and roles of people might be entangled in a team. Now, the real sustainable shift, when we talk about coaching, the real sustainable shift of a team behavior only can happen when the real causes are honored and are surfaced. So systemic coach, as if you do it systemically, you should be aware of those entanglements. I will give you some examples to make clear what we talk about. For example, on the horizontal level, you can talk about that whatever issue that can be brought up by the team or a member of the team can have roots in different systems. Imagine you're working with a management team, and there is another influence because part of the company is also outside. If you look at the former slides, outside there might be the shareholder. The shareholder is a kind of stakeholder who might try to run the company in the short run. They want results every quarter of the year, whereas the management team wants to create something in the longer term. So if you don't take into account the problem of the short-term or long-term question, you can do whatever you want with the management team, but the cooperation will be quite difficult. Also, within the team itself, imagine that one member of the team is also representative of the union within the company. Then it's important to make clear on this person, what role are you in? When you're doing a teamwork with this team coaching, there is quite a difference whether this member of the team represents the union or represents being part of this team creating a new goal. So that's the horizontal level. So take into account that people can be and teams can be part and linked to other systems. On the vertical level, it's about what happened in the past most of the time. So when you imagine on the team level, the entanglements might be because of a family-owned business. Imagine a family-owned business, and the original former of the business, the owner, has given leadership to his children, to his son. And the operations team of that company is still loyal to rules and agreements they made with the former boss. So it becomes
Dirk, sorry to interrupt. I get a feedback that you should speak a little bit louder.
Louder. Okay, there we go. This is better?
I think so, yes.
Okay. So when you, I'm at the vertical level. So, and on the team and the business, imagine you have a family business and the owner, the father of the family, has given the leadership to his son. And at the same time, you have a production team that is not working very well because there is no connection between the new leader and this team. It might be because this team is still loyal to the original leader, being the boss, the former boss. So this means that you go back in time to find the solution for the problem that is here right now and not visible in this management team or production team. On the individual level, it can be the same story, because every one of us, what we call, has its own Peacock Tail, so your personal history, patterns that were installed in your way of behavior since you were a child, whatever. So when you behave today in a certain way as a leader, it might have a cause in the former years when you were a child living at home. What we see, for example, is that there is a correlation between the eldest of the children and the kind of leadership he presents 30 years later in an organization. So this is just to tell you that in a constellation approach, you can look at the two different dimensions, horizontal in the same time and same space. What else are we part of as members or as a team? And in the vertical side, which means taking into account the history, where are we part of? And do we have to take it into account to find a solution in this team coaching question? I think that's the story, Leda.
Yeah, thank you, Dirk. And you mentioned the Peacock Tail, so I would like to give credit to John Whittington, who I think he created that term. And it's the meaning of the Peacock Tail is that you don't really see all the time everything in it, but you need to start opening. And as Dirk said, when we start looking into our personal histories, we see how much is there, what actually influences us, and it is still present. And this is the funny place, because here we get really entangled, and here we get into team dynamics, and all our biases are coming from this personal history. You also mentioned the horizontal level, and I just remembered that I think it was a few months ago when I read in one of the articles of the Center of Creative Leadership that actually it is the case with the senior leadership teams that only, I think, about 18 or 20% of them are really high performing teams, because it's quite difficult to deal with the double loyalty that they are also part of the senior leadership team. At the same time, they are leaders of their own teams. And what do they represent? What role they have to be in, and how they have to make decisions, which sometimes might be probably not in favor of their own team, but in favor of the organization. So here is one of another theory of the systemic thinking, and I personally really like it because it explains quite a lot about where are the possibilities and the limits of team coaching. Barry Oshry talks about how this system is constructed in the organizations. And if you look into a classical organization, in most of them you will have tops and middles and bottoms, and of course you need to have also customers. And Barry Oshry says, and also other psychological theorists say that actually our personalities and our individual preferences sometimes are not that strong, and they don't make such a big impact than vice versa, than the place we take or the context we are in impact our behavior and our feelings. So he says that if you are at the top, and anyone who would be in the top level would probably experience similar feelings, similar thoughts, similar responsibility. And if some people are in the middle, they would probably report similar experiences from that context. And Barry Oshry's thinking is that as I mentioned, that in the system, to survive the system, to function well, the system needs to have coping mechanisms and has to have mechanisms to actually seize opportunities to develop. And every block in this system has a unique contribution to the system and unique pitfalls. So the system will function well if each of them are able to uniquely contribute well to the system. And the system will be sabotaged if at least one of these categories will withdraw their unique contribution and will sabotage the system. And actually, I just finished today one of my team coaching modules, and we did this exercise as a mapping, bodily mapping exercise. So I actually asked all my participants to take in the space a place which would they prefer to have, either as a top, middle, bottom customer, and to report from that. And it was really fascinating to see that when I asked them to change actually their places and who was on the top to go to the bottom or to be a customer, they felt actually an immediate shift in their bodily sensations and in their thinking. So that shows that the context, the place where we are in the system, is actually, it has a big impact on what we can do. So how I make sense of this theory is that as a team coach, my job is not to make the team perfect, probably, but to empower the team I'm working with to contribute uniquely to the system and not to sabotage the system reflexively. Because as Barry Orshey says, the sabotage is happening when we are reacting, but not mindfully choosing what we have to do. And just to give you an example of not going too much into the details, but the top level is who is responsible for creating the vision, developing the business, really distributing the responsibility, and enabling others to contribute to the organization. But the moment they withdraw their responsibility, or they start micromanaging, for example, what is happening time to time, they are sabotaging the system because they are not allowing other people to take the responsibility. And the whole system will feel that impact. At middle level, the job of any middle level is to integrate, to be a bridge, to be a connector, and to help the information to flow from top to bottom and from bottom to the top. And the moment they get closer to one or the other, to the top or to the bottom, they will start sabotaging the system and not allowing it to function well, not allowing the information to flow well in the system. And we often might react in this situation and not be conscious of what is the impact on the whole system. So when we come into the team, we can pay attention to these dynamics and understand which part of the system we are being. And what is also fascinating for me in this model, that this is a subsystem in a bigger system, because if you think that you have the organization, and if you think that there is the government, for example, then immediately the top, in that case, in that condition, becomes already a middle, and they will experience similar symptoms than the middle is experiencing. And of course, you can raise now the question that what about non-hierarchical organizations? Because many organizations are moving towards flatter systems, and they try to abandon these formal structures. There was a conversation recently between Barry Orshey and Frederic Laloux. Maybe some of you heard about the Teal organizations and read Laloux' book about flatter and more aware organizations. And Lalou says that actually the goal of the flatter organizations is not to abandon the hierarchy, because it's not possible, but rather to allow the existence of natural hierarchies, which means that these top and bottom and middle will not be set in stone, but rather people will take naturally, depending on the situation, some of these positions, and they will experience the same symptoms. So for example, if someone is leading a project or leading a meeting, that person will naturally become the top in that situation and will be responsible for developing and distributing the responsibility rather than micromanaging or withdrawing it. So Dirk, would you come in again and present the laws?
Yes, thank you, Leda. Yes, let's go back to the 3 underpinning laws that we see in all systems. Now, this information, the 3 laws, they were originally found, put it that way, by Bert Hellinger, who is one of the famous...
A bit louder, a bit louder.
There we go again. Is this better?
I think so.
Okay. So the underpinning laws, they came, as a matter of fact, from Bert Hellinger, yes, who started systemic thinking, systemic work. And you can you see them. It's place, belonging, time, order, and exchange. Now those laws you can use in a family, but also in a team. Those laws are natural laws. It's not. They didn't find it just like science. It's just natural in nature. Place and belonging might be when you're part of a family. You know where you belong, of course. Time and order. You know that you're the second child out of 3. So you will always stay the second child out of 3. And you know there is some exchange with the environment. Now, the huge difference between a family and an organization is that in a family you can't switch the system. You're a member of it, you stay a member of it. In an organization, it becomes more complex because you can change organizations and different hidden dynamics might occur. So I will bring those 3 laws into organization perspective. First of place and belonging. Yes, you can go to the next, Leda. Place and belonging means that all elements do their utmost to keep the system alive, and they do it even at a high price. It means that when we are part of a system, might be a social system, might be a working system, we have a very strong motivation to assure our place in that system. Just because we like it, we depend on it, we build on it. And it's extremely difficult to change this from the outside or even from the inside. An example might be that I had a team coaching question on a production site. Now, this company was a standalone company in the past. So it means, as a management team, they had their CEO. I take only 3 of them out of the management team to explain the example. The quality manager and his team, and a sales manager and his team. And what the reason of existence was, let's make tailor-made products to different clients with the highest revenue, with the highest margin. Okay, so that's the system where they belong to. Certain moment in time, this company has been bought by a global trading company. Trading, so company who is buying and selling products around the world. So the original company became, in the broader system, it became only a production platform, just to make standard products, the more the better, at the lowest price. And the quality didn't matter at all. I mean, when the quality level was 100, 80% was enough in the new environment. So what happened when I came there, it was quite clear that the management team was thinking as they were before. So they were thinking about their own clients, their own customers, their quality levels, and so on. Whereas this was not asked anymore. So the point is that when the CEO realized that he became in a new organization, he had a new role, and it was called plant manager, responsible for production. Only from that moment on, the whole team started operating in a different way. So the quality manager and his team realized that, aha, we don't have to deliver high quality, we have to deliver an average quality in our quality control. And the sales manager and his team suddenly realized he only had one customer, being the trading company. What I try to explain is that belonging to a certain system is very strong. It's a very strong tension. So when this has to be changed, it has to be clear where it has to go to and why it has to be changed. If not, they are going to belong at a high price, and it can be literally. Another point is that makes it clear that what you exclude, you attract. So if you don't mention anything that is part of the system, it will become bigger and bigger and will block the working of the system. Thank you. Let's go to the next one. Exchange and balance. Exchange and balance means that every system, and also a team, has contact with the outside world. And systems becoming rest when the balance exists between the team members, in between the team members of the team, and in relation to the environment. If you look at a company level, there is always an exchange and a balance with the environment. If there is no exchange anymore, it means that the company will die in the short term, because then there are no customers. So there is no reason for existence. But even in smaller teams, you can see that. And I think, Leda, you have an example of it as well.
Yes, I remember that we mentioned John Whittington, with whom we have studied coaching constellations, and who is really an expert in coaching constellations. So when I became the chair for the ICF Global Board, then he said me, oh, good luck. And I said, and I asked him, why are you telling me this? And he said, because it is, the exchange principle is quite tricky in volunteer organizations. And we had a very interesting conversation about why is that. And the reason is that there is no clear transaction. In companies, if you work for the company, you get paid for that. So there is an exchange which is more or less fair, at least agreed, and you always have the chance to leave the organization if you are not happy with what you get in exchange for your work. In volunteer organizations, this is not the case. There is the implicit psychological contract, probably, that there are different expectations. So a volunteer expects something from the organization, and the organization expects something from the volunteer. And often the case is that we are volunteering for something what we are really passionate about. And what is happening in that case? So we probably give a lot. We give much more than the system is able to take in, to digest, and to restructure. And it is often the case in volunteer organizations that people who give so much experience that they are not getting back what they are expecting. And sometimes they are not expecting to get back money, but to get back something to satisfy their needs. And because they give a lot and nothing is coming back, and there is no balance in the exchange, it might be often the case that they burn out, they get frustrated, and they leave the organization.
Exactly, Leda. If I can add one more example, is what you see in balance in organizations. It also can be very subtle. You know, organizations where the culture of feedback is hardly existing. So every employee is doing his utmost to give a good performance, and in the best case, once a year, there is a formal conversation with the boss. And that's only because the boss has to do it to get its, I don't know, salary, whatever you call it. He has to do it because of the rules of the house, the formal rules of the house. The informal rule is that this employee might not trust the boss anymore because of lack of cooperation, because of lack of feedback. So the imbalance that you see in organizations and in teams can be very subtle. As you said already, Leda, it doesn't always have to do with money, but giving attention to people is a kind of balancing for what they're doing. Thank you. Shall we go to next?
Yes.
Okay. Time and order. The question is, who comes first? And you will see on the slide some typical orders or systems that order rules, put it that way, within a team, which is obvious. It can be the numbers of years working for the organization. Someone who has been working there for 10 years might come first before a younger person. The age on itself. But then you will see it becomes more complicated. The function in the organization means in the organization chart. So does it mean that the one who is higher in hierarchy has more power than the one below? Because informal, there can be other leaders, if you know what I mean. Exceptional performance. It might be that one person out of the team has done something very extraordinary that helped survive the company in a difficult time. So he should be honored. And sometimes this person comes first. Or even what we see today is a set of different competences. In today's world where the IT developments and internet goes that fast, you will see that people with new set of competences come first before people who are working there longer. So what you see here is a time and order is you have the official rules and you have the hidden dynamics, once again, in teams. So, and as a coach, you're invited to do some team coaching, but you come in at a certain moment in time where the team exists, or the group of people who should work together. I can give you an example of a team in a healthcare environment. And the question was, the official coaching question was, how can we let them cooperate better, even with the new manager of the team? So there was a problem of connection between the manager and the team. And we realized that what happened in the past was more important than the teamwork today. What happened in the past is that this team, for the last 7 years, has had 4 different leaders. And only 2 of them could connect with the team. So what should be recognized and honored before what we have done then in the meantime is check out of the years of the past what had to be honored. So we put them on a timeline and we said, look, 5 years ago, who was already in this team? And tell us what has been important at that moment in time. And what were the struggle and what were the issues you had to go for. By saying that, the people who came later in the team really recognized and could honor the effort the older people had done. So that made the tension between the team members came down. And then we went on year by year by year. So, and now we are in the here and now, and only now we can start do the traditional team coaching as we know it, about what is going on, what's the goal, what about the interrelations between all team members. So the point is that if you look at it and you go for the team coaching beyond, the question is what has happened in the past and still influences the working of the team today. Quite difficult, but just for an example. Yes, Leda.
Yeah, and it's as I understand, it's not working with the past, but it's more like respecting and honoring the past. And I have tried also several times these exercises, asking teams to just stand up in the order of when they joined the company, how long they have worked in certain roles. And it's amazing of what that does to the team dynamics and atmosphere. And also it brings a lot of information and recognition towards each other. So what are some of the tips of what you can do? Is, as Dirk said, is really knowing yourself, knowing your own personal system. And I don't know if rightly or wrongly, but I have a belief that to be a good team coach, it's much more work on ourselves than to be an individual coach, because we can get really easily entangled because we are impacted by so many people, so many factors at the same time. And we need to be even more neutral than in individual coaching, connected. So as I say often, is 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I personally enjoy also working with a second team coach who sees even more and who is even less entangled, so more neutral. And he can see and notice if the first team coach somehow is hooked into the dynamics of the team. We mentioned that it's really good to work with the not knowing without any assumptions, and really with the question, whom are we in the service for? Are we serving only the team, or are we serving the whole organization and even a bigger system? What can you say, Dirk, about the systemic questions more?
Well, in the beginning, we started this presentation with the question, where are we? And it might be a good idea to ask some systemic questions. Systemic questions, they refer to the 3 laws of systemic thinking. And one of them can be very useful in the way of, if you ask a team, by the way, who are you working for? Who do you want to serve as a team? And sometimes it's amazing what the answer is. I give you an example of a fire brigade, right, in a small town. And you ask them as a team, they have to cooperate better or whatever because of a reason of team coaching. And we ask them, so who is the owner of this fire brigade? So who is in charge? They say, yes, of course, that's the public authority for whom we are working. Okay, but from a systemic point of view, who is your client? Who are you working for? And they say, okay, that's the whole population of the town. And that's systemic questioning, like, who are you working for? And by the way, what's the priority for you as a team? Let me give another example. When you're working in healthcare with elder people, and you have a team of nurses, and they are leaving, let's say, 20 people, and you ask them, who are you working for? Then some of them say, the people sick here in the hospital or the house, so our patients. Others might say, oh yeah, by the way, we are working for the family of the patients as well. That's interesting, because the family of the patient is paying the bill and not the patient himself. So this makes, if you start asking this kind of questions, you will see what entanglements might occur, even when a team says, yes, we know what our mission and the vision is, but we are not sure who we are working for. Because who do you serve? You can create a lot of systemic questions. Those are only a few of them. This is quite learning by doing, I could say. Is that okay for you, Leda?
Yes. Anything to add to the trust the broader system?
Yes. When there is a team working and you're not sure what's going on here, you always can trust the broader system. Remember the law of exchange. So there must be a reason of existence why this team is still here, and it can be honored. So if you say, after a while, it might occur that whatever has been the original question as a team coaching question, it might happen that after a few times, you realize I'm on the wrong path. There is something else going on. When you say, I hesitate, so the attitude of, in a systemic way, is trust the broader system. Same example, you're working with a team of nurses and you got lost and they got lost. Then the question is, they are part of a bigger system, and that is something to trust. If not, the team itself shouldn't be there anymore. That's what I mean, trust the broader system.
Thank you, Dirk. So we haven't really defined what constellations are, because you can apply the systemic view without really doing a constellation, but you can apply the systemic view while doing a constellation. And constellation is a way of really mapping what is in a moment, mapping the certain factors, elements of a situation. And you can do that by using people, or you can do that on a tabletop by using different objects. When we use people for constellating, they usually don't know much about the background of the story. They just enter into a certain spatial spot in that constellation, and they really start experiencing things which are not part of their visible system, which are not part of their habits and thinking patterns. And this, if you are looking to this from a side, it really looks like something strange. It looks like something esoteric. But when you start going into it, you experience that it does have some realistical basis, because it is happening to you. So it's our another teacher, Klaus Horn, has presented an experiment where some of the researchers got really curious about whether this whole constellation works or not. And what they did, they actually asked a person, this wasn't a team coaching, but it was a constellation, and they asked the person to actually brief 3 different groups into the same issue. And these groups were in 3 different rooms at 3 different levels. And they were all filmed by a camera. And what was very interesting, that it wasn't word by word the same, but each group, knowing very little about the situation, they produced very similar patterns in the system. They came to very similar conclusions there. So it has probably some basis for functioning and working. And if you look into the constellation, organizational constellation literature, you can find some guessing, some thinking around what is the science behind constellation. And I don't really have the ambition to define that, because I think if other people couldn't do, I'm not in the place to do that as well. But because I'm very much interested in the scientific background always, I have started to ask several questions from myself and for myself of how this works, and what are the underlying principles of the 3 laws we mentioned, and what is happening, and how could this be possible. And I've certainly got to the quantum physics, which I wish I had a second life, so I would study more quantum physics. But at the moment, I need to be satisfied only with some of the things I have found. And it seems fascinating how the quantum physics is taking place nowadays in our everyday life, and how scientists are finding that it's not just the Newtonian laws which are running our daily life and the planet, but there is much more behind. And Nicola, yes.
Let me add some physics. You have 4 more minutes.
Good, thank you so much. So then I will be very quick. That Nikola Tesla said that to understand the true nature of the universe, one must think in terms of energy. And what David Tong, a theoretical physicist, says that it's actually not the particle which is the most important part in human beings and human systems, but there are everywhere matter, fluids, and energy fields. And the most fascinating discovery, which was also published in a peer-reviewed journal, comes from, surprise, surprise, from a guy whose name is Dirk. He is Dirk Meyer, a professor at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. He actually researched the mind. And it's still in very early stages, the research, but he makes a hypothesis that actually the mind is outside of the brain and it's not inside. And the mind actually forms the fourth dimension, which cannot be seen, but it can be derived mathematically. And this has a component of space and time together. And the mind acts as a black hole and contains all the information which goes in. And the brain, through the consciousness, is connected to the mind. So this is how we communicate between the personal and universal information. And you can imagine the mind as a holographic field. So probably, and that's my just very hypothetical theory, that this can be one of the very small explanations of how we pick up something more which wasn't a part of our system, but we are connected, entangled with other systems as well. And the other theory is really the entanglement theory, that when we are entangled, if we do something to one particle at whatever distance, then you can impact the other particle as well. And a lot of other interesting science, which if you are interested, you can get in touch with us. We can give you some other links to read about this. I assume that organizational constellations and quantum physics in coaching will be the next neuroscience. Now we are all interested in neuroscience, but I think that the next stage is some explanations from quantum physics of how to understand better human beings and teams and what to look for, what impacts the team. Carl, are we on time?
Yes. You have 2 more minutes left.
Okay, then I will take the last slide, which is about entanglements, parallel processes. And I see this in individual coaching as well, and in team coaching even more. That when I'm trained as a supervisor, and I often supervise coaches with whom I often experience that whatever is the bug of the client that gets in between the coach and the client and gets in between the coach and the supervisor. So the same pattern repeats itself. So a simple example would be that if a client has some boundary issues, then the professional coach will, surprise, will not have a good, profound contract and will lose the boundaries. And that will become into the coach and the supervisor, but the supervisor is trained to notice and reverse these parallel processes and create a disentanglement. So if this is happening between individuals, then in the teams it's happening even more. And therefore, it would be important to start looking more behind what is happening, what is impacting the team, and how much can we do, how much is in our power to impact, and how will that then influence the team. We also know from quantum physics, and this is the last sentence. Sorry?
I'm afraid that I have to interrupt you now because we're at the hour. I don't know, Dirk and Leda, are you available 5 more minutes, or do you have any immediate obligations right now?
I'm available for the next 5 minutes.
I'm available as well. Yes.
Okay. So, dear participants, for those of you who have to leave us, please do so. Thank you very much for participating again. For the ones that are still capable to stay with us, I think there can now be some question time. If you have any questions left, it's been quite calm compared to other sessions in terms of input, but I think there are 5 more minutes left for questions. Please go ahead. Wow, there is some extremely positive feedback coming in, Leda and Dirk. Wow, it's great. Thank you. Great webinar, excellent overview. Yes, any more questions? Thank you very much.
So it either seems very clear or not clear at all.
Well, there was some question regarding constellations. What exactly covers the term? To elaborate more on quantum physics, but that will be for another webinar. And again about the 4 roles of each relationship. So perhaps could you? I believe it was Dirk. Could you briefly re-explain the constellation phenomenon?
Do I understand you right that the question is, what is the constellation?
Yes, what exactly is it? To redefine it again.
Constellation is that you have a 3-dimensional view on what is going on in the mind of a person. Yeah, the way he looks to a certain question or a problem or an issue, you ask him to put it in the room one way or another. It can be with small cups, it can be with people, it can be whatever. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And there was also about 4 roles of each relationship. There seems to be some questions on that as well. Could you briefly re-explain that, Dirk or Leda?
Dirk, I think that's your know-how.
What was the different roles? That's the question.
The 4 roles of the relationship.
4 roles. So I don't get you.
Well, you mentioned the 4 roles of each relationship in the horizontal space.
Yes.
Yes. Could you re-explain that, please, again?
Hold on, please. In a horizontal space, it means that. Did I say 4? You mean 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yes.
That way, or just different roles?
The 1, 2, 3, 4.
Ah, did I say that? That's interesting.
I don't know, Dirk. Anyway,
the point is that when you are in a horizontal space, you have a person that might be that one individual is part of different systems. And in each system, you have a different role. So it means that there might be an entanglement roles on the individual level.
Okie-doke.
Yeah,
thank you.
But there's no reason for have 4 roles. I'm sorry, no.
Okay. Then, Leda, there also seems to be quite some interested reactions on everything related to the quantum physics. Could it be possible, Leda, to send some information on that, whether it's a paper, a white paper, or some links or some literature, so that I could send through the audience when I send the mailing for the following webinar, that I can include this? Could that be possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I can send some articles.
Okie-doke. Okay. Further, at the moment, just coming in some great, wonderful feedback about the webinar. Quite clearly, the audience has found it truly great and excellent. From my part, Leda, Dirk, I'm enormously grateful for having both of you here. I thank you for your commitments. Thank you for your time and your investment in this community of practice. It was wonderful. And I hope to see or hear you back at another occasion. For the participants that were here again, thanks a lot for your loyalty and see you next year. Have a great end year season. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for everyone, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and happy team coaching.
Thank you very much, and good luck with coaching. Thank you.